Okay, and we are live. Welcome to everybody for this Deceptive Imagery Persuasion and Magic Disinformation Kill Chain lecture. I want to thank the Midshipmen of the United States Naval Academy for attending. A little bit about myself for everybody at home who might be new to the channel. So, my name is Ryan McBeth. I'm a retired anti-tank and heavy weapons infantryman. I'm a software engineer and cyber guy. I worked on C4ISR systems and CDS, or cross-domain solutions. A cross-domain solution is a type of tool that allows you to send data from an area of low trust to an area of high trust. So let's say you have a camera on a drone. That drone is looking for bad guys. The information coming into that camera is not necessarily secure, but you have to move that information into a secure area, like a tactical operations center, so commanders can make decisions based on that data. Well, you pass it through a cross-domain solution, which makes sure there's no bad stuff in the message, there's no viruses, or people aren't trying to hack you through that channel. And C4ISR stands for Command, Control, Communications, Computers, Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance. This is basically software that finds bad guys, and we would use this software to find the bad guys and give that to our client, who would then would either use more kinetic means to service the target or continue surveillance. I'm also a YouTube content creator, and I deal a lot with disinformation, mainly because I encounter misinformation all the time. I don't necessarily consider myself a disinformation expert, but kind of like Forrest Gump, who was always running, I was always encountering disinformation on my YouTube channel when people would ask me different questions. Hey, is this true about this Russian system? Hey, is this true about this Ukrainian system? So I kind of got into the whole disinformation space just because I encountered it so many times. I am not former CIA, DIA, or Mossad, although sometimes I get that from both places. I get that I'm CIA from some people, and other people say that I'm not a real intelligence professional because I'm not a 20 or a 35 series and never went to Fort Huachuca. So funny story about that. I always like to do funny stories whenever I start a lecture. And so the funny story that relates to that is Michael Jordan wearing my shoes. So many years ago, when Kobe Bryant faced off against Michael Jordan for the first time, Michael Jordan noticed that Kobe Bryant was trash talking Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan noticed that Kobe Bryant was wearing Air Jordans, and Michael Jordan said to Kobe Bryant, like, "Man, how you gonna trash talk me when you're wearing my shoes?" And so that's kind of how I feel when the guys in the intelligence community are like, well, you're not a real intelligence guy, but yeah, you're using my software. So how are you going to trash talk me when you're wearing my shoes? So this presentation is going to be available on Substack, ryanmcbeth.substack.com. It's available as a PDF. It's also available as a PDF, and it's also available as a PowerPoint presentation. So you can feel free to download it. You can alter it as you see fit. If you want to credit me. I'd appreciate that. All right, on the agenda today, we're going to talk about deceptive imagery persuasion. That's why we're all here. We're going to talk about truthiness. We're going to talk about what is propaganda. We're going to get into the magic disinformation kill chain, and magic is an acronym. We're going to perform an exercise that uses DIP, Deceptive Imagery Persuasion, and the magic disinformation kill chain. And then we're going to get into some examples of DIP, and then we're going to go to some questions. The midshipmen get to ask their questions first, and then I'll go to anybody else in the chat once we get started. Terminal learning objective. Upon completion of the presentation, participants will be able to analyze and comprehend the utilization of deceptive imagery persuasion in creating propaganda on social media platforms, and evaluate the application of the magic kill chain framework. Magic meaning make, acquire, generate, infiltrate, and cascade when creating propaganda content. White phosphorus. So this was sent to me. I think someone pulled it off of Non-Credible Defense, and this is a great example of misinformation because When the war between Israel and Gaza first started, Israel was using a type of artillery shell called white phosphorus. White phosphorus burns very hot. It burns even under water. It's very difficult to put out. You have to let it burn out. And white phosphorus is used as an incendiary device. So essentially, white phosphorus is used whenever you want to screen troops because it creates a lot of smoke, or if you want to set fires. Now, Israel was using white phosphorus during the first phases of the war, and pretty soon everything Israel was using was white phosphorus. People actually took footage of Israeli flare shells, illumination flares, and they would speed the footage up to make it look like white phosphorus was coming down. So I've always liked this picture because it's a great example of, funny example of deceptive imagery persuasion. So let's talk about DIP. DIP stands for Deceptive Imagery Persuasion. DIP is designed to manipulate the knowledge consumer by using their lack of subject matter knowledge against them. This is normally done by using an out-of-context picture along with some text. Now, the tactic needs plausibility to work. A good example of that might be soccer. Like just about every American knows what a soccer field looks like. Their kids have played soccer. They've played soccer. They've walked past a soccer field. They watch soccer on TV. And everybody in America knows that a soccer field has 2 goals. Right? There's 2 goals on a soccer field. So if you were to say to someone, no, a soccer field actually has 4 goals, well, that's going to be really tough, right? That's really going to be really difficult to get someone to believe because they have experience with it. But if someone said cricket in the British game of cricket, there are actually 4 wickets instead of 2 wickets. You don't understand cricket, it has 4 wickets. Well, someone might believe that, especially if you show them a picture of a cricket field and there were 4 wickets on it. And they say, oh, okay, cricket has 4 wickets, right? So whenever you whenever you see deceptive imagery persuasion, you need some element of plausibility in the image in order to convince the information consumer into believing this information. And this is a guided way of performing propaganda. You are kind of guiding the information consumer into believing that they made the decision on their own. So let me give you a good example of deceptive imagery persuasion. It's my favorite example. Betty White. So if you look at this, this was actually a Facebook post. It says, Betty White in her 20s, love her. You have a picture of Betty White today. This was taken a few years ago. Betty White passed away, I believe, last year. And you have 2 black and white pictures, ostensibly of Betty White in her 20s. And what happens next? Well, here's what's wrong with this picture. Those images aren't Betty White. Those images in black and white are not Betty White. So how are people fooled by this image? Well, so people like Betty White, right? She was a popular person. People want to assume that Betty White was pretty in her 20s. It feels like it could be correct. I mean, there's Betty White. There's 2 other pictures with a woman that is probably a blonde. And she's in her 20s, and it looks like the 1940s, so maybe Betty White was in her 20s back in the 1940s. And also, the risk of being wrong is low. Right? This isn't the kind of thing where you're deciding an election based on a picture, or you're going to war based on a picture. The risk of being wrong is very low, and so you have a lower cognitive bar to like and share this kind of thing. Now I want to talk about truth and truthiness. The word truthiness was actually created by Stephen Colbert, who was a guest commentator on The Daily Show, a comedian. He had his own show for a while, The Colbert Report. And he came up with this term back in the mid-2000s, I believe. And truthiness is what you feel to be true rather than what the facts will support. And this is a major component of DIP. If an image feels like it can be true, then it can easily fool the information consumer. So now let's talk about the difference between misinformation and disinformation. This is actually, there's a very specific difference between these 2 things. Misinformation is getting the facts wrong. Disinformation is intentionally misleading the information consumer. So let me show you an example of misinformation. So remember a couple of months ago, there was an attack on an outpost that was on the border between Jordan and Syria. I think it was called Outpost 22, and some servicemen were killed by an Iranian drone. Well, this one person tweeted out, narrative spoiler, the Jordanian government says the U.S. Marines were attacked and killed at a secretive U.S. base located inside Syria, not as the U.S. claims in Jordan. Now, what's wrong with this particular tweet? Well, you might have missed it. It's actually pretty easy. The American servicemen in the drone strike who were killed were Army reservists. They weren't Marines. Now, here's the question. Was this malicious or was it just lazy fact-checking? It's probably just lazy fact-checking, right? Most people don't really know the difference between the Army and the Marines, so it's easy to see someone in uniform and think, oh, they're Marines, just because that's kind of what pops into your head. So I don't think this person was intentionally being misleading, but this is an example of misinformation. This person just got the facts wrong. So let's talk about disinformation. And this example comes from a tweet from everybody's favorite disinformation artist, Jackson Hinkle. So Jackson Hinkle, just a couple of days ago, this was absolutely perfect for this lecture. He said, "Why is Turkey supplying Israel with weapons and ammunition?" Now, here's the actual truth. Turkey sold about $80,000 worth of civilian firearms classified as sporting goods for hunting and sports purposes. Israel has sporting goods stores. People hunt in Israel. People shoot skeet in Israel. People are in shooting and sporting clubs in Israel. And I'm sure before the war, there were orders to purchase firearms and sporting goods from Turkey. Turkey has a very robust civilian hunting and sport shooting firearms manufacturing sector. And the items that were sent were non-combat firearms, revolvers, parts of pistols, swords, machetes, bayonets. It seems like kind of a weird way of putting it, but that's probably what's on the customs form to get into the country. But Jackson Hinkle took something that was true and he twisted it to fit his own narrative, and he lied. He lied. So the truth was that Turkey sold about $80,000 of civilian sporting goods to Israel. And the lie was Turkey is sending weapons to Israel. I mean, there are weapons, but probably only going to hurt you if you're a sporting clay. So now I want to talk about what is propaganda. And there's the picture right above my head. That's Joseph Goebbels. He was the H-Man's main propaganda guy. So propaganda, it's information of a biased or misleading nature used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Branding and marketing is a form of propaganda. What's branding? Branding is a contract of quality between the manufacturer and the consumer. When you buy a brand, you know exactly what you're going to get. When I buy Coca-Cola, I know what I'm gonna be tasting when I drink that Coca-Cola. When I buy McDonald's, I know what I'm going to be tasting when I eat that Big Mac. The countries have brands as well. America's brand is freedom. Mom, apple pie. Worship the God of your choice on the Sabbath of your choice. America's brand is freedom. And Ukraine's brand is heroism. You see that all the time. Ukraine promotes, here's this soldier rescuing a cat. Here's a soldier who had his last cigarette while standing up to the Russians. Now here's why branding is important. It's because propaganda is kind of designed to tarnish your brand. The goal of propaganda is to influence or persuade an audience to further an agenda or tarnish the brand of a country or of a government. You got to take the Pepsi challenge and believe that Russian disinformation that is talking about your government. All right? Take that step, that Pepsi challenge of trying out this kind of propaganda. Propaganda is also a shaping operation. Now, for those of you who are not in the military, a shaping operation sets up a battlefield for future success. Now, in kinetic warfare, that might be taking a hill, taking decisive terrain. That's terrain that you will be able to, that will control an entire area. So you might have a hill overlooking a valley, and that is decisive terrain. You can control the entire valley if you capture that hill. Well, in information warfare, your shaping operation is designed to shape the opinions of the adversary against their own government. So how does DIP, Deceptive Imagery Persuasion, shape the battlefield? Well, it uses truthy images with accompanying misleading text. Words are hard. It targets the layman who has very limited subject matter knowledge. It allows the information consumer to believe that they came to that guided conclusion on their own. That's a very powerful way of arriving at a conclusion, to think that, oh, I came up with this on my own, nobody actually told me. And it creates mistrust of the adversary's government or leadership. And this example right here, you can see this tweet. It was about the Hawaii wildfires. It was a claim that the wildfires were started by the American government using a space laser, using a directed energy weapon. So why was this misinformation campaign carried out? Well, it was carried out by Russia to increase mistrust in America's federal government, that the government was going to burn Hawaii so the government could take it over and purchase the land or take the land back from the people who owned it. And this spread like wildfire on Twitter. Carolina Orbueno, who everyone should read her Substack, weaponized spaces.substack.com. She did an excellent breakdown of some of the disinformation from the Hawaii wildfires. So now let's talk about the magic disinformation kill chain. And this is make the goal, acquire the target, generate the disinformation, infiltrate the target, and cascade the amplification. So here's magic in action. So first we're going to make the goal. In this case, we're going to talk about cluster weapons. Now, a cluster weapon or cluster bomb, cluster artillery shell, this is a shell or a bomb, and inside of that bomb are many bomblets, usually about the size of grenades. And when that bomb is dropped or the shell is fired at a pre-designated point or altitude, the casing will break open, and all of these little bomblets will be released. And the bomblets will spread out in a certain kind of pattern, and they will detonate around a certain area, blanketing an area with these submunitions, they're called. And one interesting thing about these cluster weapons is that sometimes when the casing breaks open, the weapons hit each other and they don't deploy correctly, and then when they hit the ground, they don't explode because they hit the ground the wrong way or they were damaged when they bumped into each other in mid-flight. And so between 2% to 8% of American weapons, I believe that was the number, and up to 45% of Soviet-era cluster weapons will be duds when they land. And the problem is that 20 years later, when some farmer is tilling his field, he steps on a cluster weapon and bang, now he's done. So people, there are people who do not like cluster weapons, and in a lot of cases, some countries don't use cluster weapons anymore. We can use that. So making the goal, it is prevent the U.S. from sending cluster weapons to Ukraine and increase negative sentiment about America. All right, next, we need to acquire the target. So the target is going to be four types of people. It's going to be the layman information consumers who are just unfamiliar with weapons. The second type of target is going to be peace activists. The third type are going to be pro-Russian sophists. And a sophist is someone who kind of repeats the party line. They're not necessarily a paid amplifier. They just believe in the cause either because they have a pro-Russian ideology or they're just an internet edgelord, right, who's on 4chan and they want to show everyone how edgy they are. And the fourth kind of person we're going to target are Americans who are opposed to Ukraine just on financial grounds. Why are we giving Ukraine money when we have so much trouble at home? Now, step 3 is to generate the disinformation. So we're going to use a very easy to remember term. Cluster bombs are horrific and cluster bombs are illegal. Now, in reality, cluster bombs are no more horrific than any other weapon. If you get blown up, you get blown up. Again, one of the problems is that cluster weapons can create unexploded ordnance, and that can be a problem later. And cluster bombs are illegal. Now, I think it's 126 countries have banned cluster weapons, But the countries that banned cluster weapons are the kind of countries that wouldn't use cluster weapons anyway, like Canada, Belize. So something is only illegal if you signed a treaty saying you wouldn't use those weapons. So there is nothing illegal about cluster weapons if you never signed that treaty. And again, the countries that sign that treaty are countries that don't tend to use cluster munitions or bomb anyone anyway. Next, we're going to infiltrate the target. In this case, a seeding account on social media is going to be used to start the spread. And seeding accounts are accounts that have a lot of followers, and they start this disinformation chain. Sometimes they have a lot of followers, sometimes they only have a few followers, and then other people are instructed to grab that information from that account and start to harvest that information and then later amplify it. But in this case, this was a reporter from Tbilisi, Georgia, who evidently has some pro-Russian sympathies. And this person said in her seed, "Cluster munitions are horrific." Let me throw this up here. Cluster munitions are horrific. Shrapnel flies off, killing and injuring people indiscriminately, takes out an eye, arm, etc. I condemn the use of it every time, and so did many when Russia was using it. Now that it's the U.S., who has always used it, who will speak up. So you can see there they use that term, cluster, horrific. Now keep this in mind. It's going to be important in the next slide, and you're going to finally see the end state. The end state is to cascade the amplification. This tweet came from Robert Kennedy Jr., who is an American lawyer, and I suppose he wants to be a politician. This guy has 2.8 million followers on Twitter. Robert Kennedy Jr. is not a weapons expert. He used the same terminology as the seeded Russian text. And it can be inferred that he is an information consumer that just followed the trend from these seeding accounts. And you'll see that when I show you the actual tweet, which says, "Cluster bombs are munitions that are so horrific for civilians that more than 100 nations have signed an international treaty banning them. Now the Biden administration is preparing to send them to Ukraine." That's the end state of the operation. There's your cascade, the amplification phase. So now I want to talk about an actual use case of how magic is used in DIP. Now we're going to use Deceptive Imagery Persuasion, and in this particular case it's going to be something called skunk water. Now skunk water is this all-natural, non-toxic riot control device that is made from yeast, and this yeast really smells. And if I move my window over here, you can see there is a truck. That truck has some Hebrew lettering on it. There's a video where that truck is spraying water. Now, Israel uses this skunk water to disperse protesters. They not only use it against Palestinian protesters in the West Bank, they also have used it against Israeli protesters. The smell is designed not only to make crowds disperse, but make them reluctant to protest again because they tend to smell for days on end after they're hit with this skunk water. So how can we use this footage of an Israeli truck spraying skunk water to craft a DIP narrative? All right, remember, we make the goal, we generate the disinformation, we infiltrate the target, and we cascade the amplification. So now I'm going to give the midshipmen 5 minutes. We'll give you guys 2 minutes to discuss this amongst yourselves. Let me put this slide back on, and you guys get 2 minutes. I'll be back in 2 minutes, and we will continue with the lecture. Okay, pencils down. So, step 1 for the skunk water. We're going to make the goal. We're going to shape the battlefield by influencing the American public opinion to turn against Israel. The end state will be raised awareness at the plight and humiliation of the Palestinians, not only in war, but on a daily basis. Next, we're going to acquire the target. We're going to target information consumers on social media who only have a surface level understanding of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These people are more likely to share this information without thinking critically about the topic. Next, we're going to generate the disinformation. So this stuff smells really bad, so we're going to use the term raw sewage. It's a very uncomplicated concept. Everybody's gone to the bathroom before. They know what it smells like when you go to the bathroom. So we're going to say it is raw sewage that they're spraying. We're going to overlay that term raw sewage with the truck spraying fluid. Most information consumers do not understand how the sewage system works, and they don't understand how riot control tactics work. So here are the major items that we're going to emphasize to create compliance. Truck, spray, raw sewage. So 4 things: truck, spray, raw sewage. Next, we're going to infiltrate the target. So we're going to use seeding accounts to start this disinformation campaign. We want to use as little text as possible so amplifiers can kind of add their own flavor. This is actually crucial to make this look like it is a grassroots program, like people from all over suddenly decided that they saw this thing and they want to talk about it instead of this having been seeded intentionally. Next, we cascade finally we cascade the amplification. And if you search the term Israel sprays sewage on Twitter or on TikTok, this is what you get. There are literally hundreds of videos, the same exact video of this Israeli truck spraying skunk water, and there are multiple captions, each of which kind of gets more extreme. And we want to go for the more extreme. We're letting these individual content creators do the work for us. So here's an example. This item on the left says sewage water sprayed by Israel on Palestinian houses. And the one on the right, Israeli police spraying sewage in the streets to spread disease. I didn't say anything about spreading disease. This was just something somebody just made up, but it works. Because the more extreme examples on social media tend to rise to the top. So if you're that disinformation agent, you want to send these guys a thank you card. Thank you for spreading this disinformation for us. All right, let's give another case study. This comes out of Israel as well. Explosive meat. So I'm going to move this. So a couple of months ago, there was a video of these meat cans that ended up on Twitter and Telegram. And here, in one example, this text says, "The IDF deliberately leaves explosive cans disguised as tinned meat in Gaza schools. Once opened, they detonate and kill or severely wound a child. This video was published to warn children from playing with them if found." Now let me show you another example of this explosive meat. This came from the Quds news network, which that's a news network it's basically just a propaganda channel. And they said, according to local sources, Israeli jets dropped cans containing explosives as bait for starving, displaced Palestinians in the Al-Maswi in southern Gaza. 2 children, 1 man, and 1 woman were killed by the fake cans. Here's the problem. The meat cans were M603 landmine fuse packaging. Now, here's kind of the deal with this, and this was a problem that was created by Israel and laziness. So Israel is using a type of landmine called an M15 landmine. It's an anti-tank landmine. They're daisy chaining them together, and they're using det cord to collapse tunnels. If you're using det cord to explode these landmines, to use them as demolition charges, then you don't need the fuse. So guys are taking the landmines out of the box. The fuse is in the box. They throw the fuse over their shoulder. It lands in a pile. They put the landmine in the tunnel. They wire all the landmines together. They blow it. Guess what they left behind? What did they leave behind? They left behind the packaging. Then someone just needs to come along and make a video. So why did this work? Well, very few people can identify landmine fuse packaging. Unless you've handled live landmines, you probably don't know what one of these fuses looks like. The tin looks like it could be food. I mean, there's definitely truthiness there. Look at the pop-top can there. Look at the key that can open up the can. That definitely looks like a food can. The can label was purposely faced away from the camera. As you can see, all of these cans have been turned around so the label is not facing the camera. And there are some information consumers that believe that Israel would leave booby-trapped cans. So there's truthiness right there, along with the truthiness that it looks like a food tin. So now we have emotional, fictional text with a very convincing picture. These are the fake meat cans. Now I want to show you another dip case study, the woke Navy. Did this for you midshipmen here. So this happened, I'm going to move my thing here. All right, so this happened on last year's Super Bowl. It was Super Bowl in the 2023. And this said, I can't even believe what I just saw during the national anthem at the Super Bowl. They showed the sailors on the deck of the USS Carl Vinson, one of out of 3 Nimitz-class supercarriers, and they were dressed and arranged in rainbow colors. The Chinese military is LATO. I guess that means laughing at us. Now, here's why this is wrong. Navy flight deck personnel were different colors, different uniform colors to indicate their job function. Like guys in purple, they're fuel handlers. Guys in red are firefighters and ammo handlers. The guys in white are officers and medical personnel. The average person doesn't know that. The average person, especially someone who is predisposed to be angry at the military's wokeness, might look at this picture and go, my God, the military's gone woke. They're dressing everybody in rainbow colors. They don't know these are what the Navy calls Skittles, the deck workers on the aircraft carrier. So why did this work? Well, it worked because few people understand the colors or the purpose of Navy flight deck uniforms. The image triggers a very emotional response in the easily offended. If you're predisposed to being angry about wokeness, then there is truthiness to this picture. That picture looks truthy to you. In all honesty, what people should be angry about is that everyone on the carrier was forced up on deck to do a 3-second live shot of the aircraft carrier. That's what people should be angry about, instead of being able to watch the game by themselves. But you also have misleading text with a correct picture. Let's do another dip case study here. Bradley's at the border. So this actually was started on a Russian disinformation Telegram channel, and it was a video of these armored fighting vehicles, Bradleys and M1 Abrams tanks, and they were on a rail car and they were headed past a traffic crossing in Texas. And the tweet says, a train transporting dozens of M1 Abrams and Bradley tanks through Texas toward the southern border. All these vehicles belong to the Texas National Guard. They're also transporting self-propelled artillery. What exactly is the point? Just for show. So here's the deal. Texas has no armor units in the National Guard. There is one company, a CAV, I believe, in Texas, and I think they share that with Tennessee. It's a National Guard unit that goes across borders. The vehicles on the train were M2A3 or M2A4 variants, which are not frequently seen in the National Guard. Currently, the active duty military has the A3 variant. They're being replaced by the A4 variant. Now, the A3 variant is going to mechanized National Guard units that have older versions of the Bradley. And I think 2 states have the A3 versions, or the A3 variant of the Bradley. So I doubt that Texas has gotten this. And last I checked, I made a video on this, they do not have the A3 yet, that one CAV unit. Another thing to note is that troop and vehicle movements happen all the time. There is no way of knowing where that train is going. And there's no way of knowing what kind of unit is on that train unless you look at what are called the bumper numbers on that vehicle. Every vehicle in the military has a stenciled on number where they have the vehicle number and the unit number on that vehicle. So the only way you're going to tell what kind of vehicle what unit that vehicle belongs to is by looking at that bumper number. I didn't see any bumper numbers in that picture. And the final thing is that a Bradley would be a very expensive way of monitoring the border and not particularly effective. The Border Patrol still uses horses. Why? Because horses, you're high up on a horse, you can see really far. Horses can go over rugged terrain. a Bradley would eat fuel like crazy. I mean, it has some good sensors on it. It's got good thermals, but you could put good thermals on a Humvee. You could put good thermals in a drone. You could put good thermals hand carried by a guy on the back of a horse. It would be a lot more effective and a lot cheaper. So why did this work? Well, very few people can actually identify armored vehicles. And very few people know that the Army frequently moves vehicles by rail. The border crisis has predisposed some Americans into believing extreme scenarios. And there's your truthiness right there. If you're on the left, then you might believe, oh my God, Greg Abbott is putting Bradleys on the border and they're going to use their machine guns to mow down migrants as they come over. Or if you're on the right, you might go, finally, Greg Abbott's the governor of Texas is going to prevent migrants from going over because once they see the Bradleys, they'll turn around. So there is truthiness to this on both sides. So this is actually really good because it can make both sides angry. Now, how to fight DIP? How to fight deceptive imagery persuasion? Well, the first way is we need to educate information consumers on where to find reliable information. Just because someone has a lot of followers doesn't necessarily mean that they know what they're talking about. And you might want to check your sources. If someone doesn't provide a source, occasionally you see this on Twitter, alert, 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 France sending troops to Ukraine. All right, well, where did you get that source from, right? Second, if the information causes an emotional reaction, you need to pause before actually sharing it. Third thing, don't place yourself or your sailors in a position where an image might be taken out of context. A good way might just be careful what you post online. You could post a picture of you pointing at a map, and a disinformation agent can take that picture and say, American soldiers shows us where chemical weapons were manufactured that killed innocent women and children. So you need to be very cognizant of the kind of pictures you take and put on social media. Finally, we need to, as Americans, we need to provide the correct information through official channels. And that's not really something we do right now. And we don't tend to be able to disseminate that at internet speed. And one of the ways to fix that is with what's called an offensive PAO. Now, this kind of enters the realm of while we're dreaming, I want a pony. But this is something I say in every single lecture, because I believe that an offensive PAO, an offensive public affairs officer, is probably going to be one of the most important components of the military in the next couple of years, especially if deterrence fails and we have to fight China. So the Navy actually has an offensive PAO. They're called Viper teams. And that sounds way cooler than it actually is. Viper means Visual Information Personnel. Basically, when the People's Liberation Army Navy, when they're out in the ocean and they're doing dangerous stuff in their ship and they cut off an American destroyer, we're there taking, the Viper team is there taking pictures of it and taking video of it so that when China claims that we were being reckless, we can put out our imagery and say, no, it was you guys who were being reckless. So the Navy kind of has taken steps to get ahead of disinformation. Now here's what I envision the role of an offensive PAO. The offensive public affairs officer's job is to work with content creators and the media to get the right story out. Typically, PAOs, public affairs officers, they tend to create media or they work with the media, but they're not really getting ahead of the story. They don't tend to push the story. And we need offensive PAOs that can push the truth. Now, in America, we have the First Amendment. The government can't tell people what to publish. But there are ways of working with content creators that can move at internet speed to get the right story out. And you can get out the correct images. You can get out the correct version of what happens. You can give that information to a cadre of content creators, and you can tell them, look, you can publish this or you cannot publish this, but this is what really happened. If you want to have a good video about whatever subject, you can use this information or not. So here's the role of the offensive PAO in conflict. Number one is to drive the truthful narrative. You provide facts and explain weapons and explain tactics, because the average person does not understand weapons and tactics. Ideally, this would be a combined arms or combat arms officer, or I suppose in the Navy, a fleet warfare officer, or a submarine officer, or an air wing officer that has additional training in how to work with the media. These people are authorized to work in internet time and push out what actually happened, the event that actually happened. They can anticipate the story, and they can partner with creators. They have content creators, and they have the regular media on speed dial. And they're able to say, hey, listen, this event just happened in the South China Sea with this Chinese frigate, and here's what really happened. Here's the video of what really happened. Here's our procedures when this sort of thing happens. You can go with the story, or you can not go with the story, but here's what really happened. I think an offensive PAO would allow us to get ahead in the information war to come. Now, that being said, look, we've had land warfare ever since Cain killed Abel, right? For thousands of years, we've taken land warfare seriously. And we've taken sea warfare seriously. We've taken naval warfare seriously. And by the time World War I arrived, we took the air warfare seriously. And by the first Gulf War, we had satellites with GPS. We're taking space warfare seriously. And anybody who's ever tried to connect to an Army network knows that we take the cyber realm seriously. And cyber kind of weaves its way through land, sea, and air. Why aren't we taking InfoWar, DIP, and the magic kill chain seriously? Is information warfare a component of warfare, or is it not? Because our adversaries are using information warfare, and they're using it really well. We need to start to take information warfare seriously, the same way we've taken land, sea, air, and cyber seriously. So now I'm going to take questions, and the questions are going to start with the midshipmen. And once the questions are done once I'm done with these questions, I'll go to anybody who is on the live stream. So, all right, first question. How will this info regarding DIP help us better inform and guide our enlisted soldiers and Marines in the future? All right, how will this info regarding DIP help us better inform and guide our enlisted sailors and Marines in the future? The first thing is be wary of what you post. Know that anything you post online, any image you take with your cell phone, that can be misconstrued. That can be used by one of our adversaries and used in a disinformation program. So that's kind of number one. I, for one, was absolutely shocked that Israeli soldiers have cell phones. That's one of the first things I would have taken away. Like, if you don't have a cell phone, you're not going to be able to take the stupid pictures that get you in trouble later. Next was, how are disinformation producers getting creative when it comes to their tactics and the use of AI? So the use of AI has been used to speed up workflow or generate local content. So one good example is, let's say you are a Russian disinformation agent, and I just did a video about this recently of people who are pretending to be ESPN sports reporters on Twitter, and they, like, half their content was sports content and half their content was misinformation content or pro or anti Joe Biden content. And if you're trying to pretend to be a local person or talk about local sports, you could use AI to generate a block of text about a certain kind of basketball player. So AI just kind of speeds up the kill chain when you're actually in that phase of when you're actually in that phase of when you're in that phase of generation, right? So using AI can speed up your generation faster than you can if you're trying to find people who lived in America for a while and know local sports teams. So that might be one example. Next is, how might disinformation producers be tailoring their posts to military members? I haven't really seen much of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the talk about Chinese hypersonic missiles was kind of geared towards making sailors nervous. Now, hypersonic missiles from China are a big problem. It's a threat that we've never really felt. I shouldn't say hypersonic missiles are a threat. Let me rephrase that. Ballistic missiles have been hypersonic for years. So we know how to defeat those things. The problem is the hypersonic glide vehicles that don't follow that traditional ballistic path. You know, they can kind of move around different things. We don't necessarily know where they're going to go. So I could easily see people using disinformation to discourage sailors, saying like, oh, well, if you have to fight China, you're going to have to fight our DF-27 missiles, and you're just going to die in a cold iron coffin in the ocean. So that might be one way they're doing it. I personally haven't seen that, but I would not be surprised if there's people online right now who are constantly talking about how superior Chinese hypersonic weapons are. How might the type and message of disinformation campaigns change when an attack or an invasion of Taiwan is imminent? So we're going to see two things. The first is we're going to see propaganda, not disinformation, but I think we're going to see China start to change the Chinese mindset around giving blood. Back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of poor Chinese were encouraged to give blood. A lot of poor Chinese from the countryside were encouraged to give blood. And a lot of people in China got HIV from having their blood drawn with dirty needles or reused needles. And that made people in China very reluctant to give blood. I believe it's about 8% of Chinese are willing to give blood. When we start seeing Chinese social media campaigns on Chinese social media, or we see Chinese television start talking about the virtues of giving blood for the motherland, that's going to be one indicator that we're going to see. The other thing we're probably going to see on social media is we're going to see a pro-China narrative, or a narrative that Taiwan has always been Chinese. So once you start seeing those two things, blood drives in China and a narrative that Taiwan has always been Chinese, that's probably going to be the first clue that we're going to see the run-up to invasion. And of course, once the invasion happens, now we're going to see young people who are easily manipulated trying to stop ships. And actually, this just happened, I think, just today or yesterday in San Francisco. People blocked a fleet oiler, a Navy fleet oiler. It was the Harvey Milk. They blocked this fleet oiler from leaving because they had weapons going to Gaza. I guess these people don't know what fleet oilers actually do. They provide fuel for ships. Not a lot of weapons on a fueling ship. And if you're going to Gaza, you'd probably leave from the East Coast, not the West Coast, because the water levels in the Panama Canal right now are really low. But so that you'd probably see stuff like that, posts encouraging people to block this U.S. Navy base, prevent troops from leaving this Army base, because the people of Taiwan have always been Chinese, and this is just an American colonial imperialist effort to actually take over Taiwan for themselves. Next was how is North Korea involved in the disinformation sphere? That's a good one. North Korea is mainly targeting South Korea with active measures for disinformation. They're mainly target conservatives because they don't like it when a conservative government is in charge in South Korea. They want governments that are more pro-North Korea. I know that one thing that China has done, that North Korea has done before, is that whenever the West comes out with a narrative that there isn't enough food in North Korea, you start seeing these Twitter posts or these YouTube posts or TikTok posts where it's, hey, I went shopping at a supermarket in North Korea and look at all this food. So that's kind of how they're working their disinformation. They'll do truth tours. Here's what it's like skiing at a North Korean resort. Isn't North Korea fantastic? So you don't really see the kind of active measures coming out of North Korea where North Korea is trying to destabilize the U.S. government. Russia's already got that. China's already got that. It's almost like North Korea is trying to repair their image by using social media with these truth tours. What steps should social media companies take to limit the spread of disinformation? First is AI to detect suspicious accounts. I mean, if you're posting 51 times a minute or 51 times an hour, if you're posting 51 times a minute, you're a bot. But if you're posting 51 times an hour, like I caught one bot that way, you're probably not an authentic user. You're cutting and pasting, or you're following a script, and that's something that social media companies can use that can use AI detection to stop that today. They can do that today. I think a lot of them don't want to, because that kind of inflammatory content increases engagement. The more engagement you have, the more ads you can sell. Cue the ad for the Lexus, cue the ad for makeup, cue the ad for Aldi. Right? Another thing they can do is they can use a cooldown between sharing content. So before you're allowed to amplify content, you could do a math problem. That could be one thing, like, hey, do this quick math problem before sharing this content to make sure you're a real user. That would at least slow down the bots a little bit. You have to do a math problem. Another thing would be a cooldown, in the sense that once you share something, you can't share anything else for another 10 minutes or another 20 minutes. And that could help stop the spread of some of this stuff. And it would make people just a little more reluctant to share something that they see on a whim. It's so easy, just click, you just shared something, you just amplified something. So it can help prevent some things from going viral unless they really deserve to go viral, or unless there is some truth to that, because people might not be willing to use their one share per 20 minutes or one share per hour to just share information on a whim. Another thing might be to charge for sharing. You want to share something, you have to pay 10 cents. You get charged 10 cents to share something, or maybe you get a couple of free shares a day, but if you share something more than 5 times, now you're charged a nickel. Just make someone feel some kind of pain for having to share something. And this is the last question. Are disinformation campaigns from Russia and China affecting the military recruitment crisis? Well, from what I've heard, the way some commanders treat sailors is enough. Russia doesn't need to help. Maybe pushing a woke military, that might be kind of a thing, saying like the Navy has drag queen story hour. Any people that think the drag queen story hour is bad, wait till you get a load of the line crossing ceremony. All right, the Navy has done some kind of bonkers stuff for hundreds of years, right? So the line crossing ceremony, by the way, is this, for civilians there, it's this ceremony where when you cross the equator, or I think the international date line, you kind of get hazed and you have to kiss King Neptune's belly, and then people dress up in costumes and such. So I really haven't noticed any specific disinformation campaigns from Russia or China trying to influence the recruitment crisis. I think the recruitment crisis is just a factor of a lot of people, they like to smoke weed, and then a lot of people are overweight, and there are just too many opportunities in civilian jobs right now where you don't have to deal with Navy discipline or Army discipline, and I think that's kind of contributing to the recruiting crisis. I think once we see unemployment start to rise, we're going to see more people joining the military. And we have 5 minutes left in our time box. I am going to go to the chat for questions. So, question: Would the U.S. using information warfare be a good strategy, or would it be one we should avoid because it's immoral and what our enemies engage in? So we engage in information warfare all the time. I don't think we engage in it on the scale that Russia and China do. And then maybe because that's kind of like a blind spot on us. I know that in the Trump administration, they engaged in some information warfare using Chinese social media to say that certain Chinese leaders were corrupt. So should we do it? I mean, if there can be an advantageous outcome, it is a component of warfare. So I don't see why. Remember, if we go back to that. Those warfare domains, if the information war is a component of land, sea, air, space, and cyber, why wouldn't we use it, right? So why would we ignore one domain of warfare? So I would say it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So what other questions we got here? Do you think weather balloons collecting LiDAR signals, radiation, other detection, or planning attacks, drones, aircraft would have been detected sooner? I guess you're talking about that Chinese balloon that flew over the U.S. So the advantage of that weather balloon is persistence. It can float above a certain area and collect intel in a way that a drone or a satellite just can't do, because the satellite's passing over at 17,000 miles per hour, I believe. So a balloon has persistence. Do I think the weather balloons were collecting LiDAR? It was collecting everything. It was collecting absolutely everything. All the signals intelligence it possibly could, and also taking pictures. What else here? I want to hire an offensive PAO for my company to work on a public marketing. Where should I go? Find the foreign military or intelligence pros based in the UK? Using an offensive PAO, I think that's just a marketing company, really, right? Or a crisis management company. That would probably be the equivalent of an offensive PAO. Although, when you hire a crisis management company, you're already in the crisis. But maybe some crisis management companies actually try to get ahead of the problem. What else I have here? Question: how do you think Israel should deal with all the dip online? How do you think the Hamas-Israel war will end and when? So I'm not going to answer the second question because that's not what this topic is about. But how do I think Israel should deal with all of the dip online? What they should do is they should publish the correct version of the story. Now, whether people believe them or not, well, they lost the initiative. Israel lost the information war on October 17th, 10 days after the attacks, when an explosion happened at Al Arabiya Hospital, and people believed it was an Israeli bomb. They didn't even check with Israel first. They just kind of believed Hamas. Israel lost the information war that night, and they've been losing it ever since. So how do I believe Israel should deal with all the dip online? They could put out the right information, but I think one of the issues is that at this point it doesn't matter, because either there's so much misinformation about Israel, or Israel has done some genuinely jacked up stuff. One example that recently came out today was they shot a couple of guys and buried their bodies with a bulldozer. And I watched that. A couple of people sent that video to me, and I was like, I can't really tell what I'm looking at. But I guess Israel admitted that they did that because they thought the guys were wearing suicide vests. Well, they're at the point now where if they give out the good information, they're still the bad guy. If they give out bad information or they lie, they're the bad guy. So in a way, that's kind of bad, because now it's like, well, we don't care what people think of us, and when you don't care what people think of you, you can do a lot of crazy stuff. What else we have here? We have one more minute. Any other questions in the? Wow, why did the U.S. and NATO lie to the Soviets about not expanding east? That's more of a political question. From what I understand, and again, that's beyond the scope of this particular lecture, but supposedly just Bill Clinton said, oh yeah, don't worry, we're not going to expand NATO anymore. Well, put it into a treaty. It's not in a treaty, it's just something somebody said. What else do I have here? What's on the tube for this evening? Give me actual questions. Why do you think there's so much dip against Israel as opposed to other countries? Probably because it's the flavor of the month. It's the flavor of the month right now, and that's just kind of, it's the most popular thing going. There's a lot of people who have a stake in it. Any response to Mike David's allegations against you on the red bar? The text messages he claims yours look bad. I don't know. I don't even know what that is. All right, that's it. That's all I got for tonight. Hey, thank you guys for coming. The midshipmen from the Navy, I think you guys are doing a fantastic thing right now. You are the next generation of people who are going to lead this country to victory if deterrence ever fails.